Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Glorified Manager Wants Job Security. So I work in the tow industry as a dispatch supervisor for a company that specializes in heavy equipment moves and trailers on top of regular tow industry stuff like tire changes, boosts and lockout services. I have a manager, who we'll call Jeff. Jeff is a rough and tumble sort, a friend of the club, if you catch my meaning, and is more likely to yell and scream rather than commit to the customer service part of the job, which is my specialty, but that also extends to how he treats employees. My way or the highway. Well, Jeff seems to have this idea that he is the only one who can quote customers on either long distance, heavy equipment and trailer transports. He is not. For the record, every single dispatcher we have is perfectly capable of quoting the correct prices and booking calls, seeing as we do this every day that he's not around. But still, he gets up in arms and yells if we take calls and set them up without his involvement. He's been with the company 40 years, so he's embedded, but literally does the exact same job the dispatchers do and sometimes drives a truck to help out on the road. One day in particular, I take a call and quote the customer. Jeff loses his crap, starts flipping out about how he's supposed to be taking all those calls, and from this point on I am to direct every call about heavy equipment, trailers or long-distance moves to him so he could retain his large salary and job security. I don't think he really thought that one through. So, malicious compliance it is. After the end of his shift? Send him a message with the name and number of the caller. Weekend? Send him a message. Middle of the night? Send him a message. He's on vacation? Send him a message. Camping? Send him a message. On a ride with his brothers? Send him a message. As one would imagine, he couldn't keep up with the demand, and as a result we started to lose sales, constantly forget things and customers would go elsewhere. Eventually, the boss hears of it. He's normally a pretty hands-off type of boss. He signs the checks, sure, but most of the time he's out on his boat ignoring the world. Boss calls him in to find out why he's been so off, and manager attempts to throw me and my team under the bus. So I talk to the boss, explain exactly what was said. Thankfully, the boss has known him for 40 years and knows what he's like, so he understands completely and has a big chat with him about it. Result: he is no longer allowed to monopolize handling the calls for the lion's share of the business, and our team of experienced dispatchers now no longer have to involve him in every damn call for service. Jeff generally avoids me now at work. I'm fine with that. Next one is titled, By All Means, Please Tell My Wife About Us. In a previous life, before my world came apart about 5 months ago, I was the solo pastor of a medium-sized church in a large-ish southern city. One unhappy side effect of being a solo pastor is that when your phone rings, you answer it even if you don't recognize the number, since you have no idea how important the call may be. It could be a church member's grandkid, whom you've never met, calling to tell you Miss Bessie has been diagnosed with some horrible disease. Or it could be a church member who just wants to talk your ear off for 2 hours. So earlier this evening my phone rings. And since old habits die hard, I answered it. Me. Hello? Her. Hey, what are you up to? I want to be clear before I proceed that I don't recognize this lady's voice, but I just assumed that she was a former church member's kid or grandkid, something. So I was cordial. Me. Not much, honestly. I actually just walked through the door with some food. How about you? Her. I'm hanging out with girl whose name I don't know. Me. Great. I'm sorry to have to ask this, but with whom am I speaking? I don't recognize your voice and I have no idea who other girl is. Ladies and gentlemen, apparently that was the wrong thing to say. Her. Darren, you know who this is. This is Jessie. Me. Well, Miss Jessie, I hate to break this to you, but my name isn't Darren and I don't know any women named Jessie. I believe you've called the wrong number. Her. No, I didn't. This isn't funny, Darren. What happened? Did you leave your ringer on again and you're worried your wife is going to hear us talking? Me. Ma'am, I'm very sorry, but now I know you've got the wrong number. Her. I want to come over there and tell her all about us and how you've been screwing me behind her back for 2 years. I'm sick of this crap. Cue malicious compliance. Me. You know what, that would be great. By all means, come to my house and wake my wife up and tell her all about our torrid sexual affair. Her. I'm leaving now. Engine cranks in background. Me. Okay, see you soon. 5 months ago I discovered that my wife of 10 years started cheating on me 18 months into our marriage. She racked up a grand total of 16 affairs in a decade. Somewhere in my immediate area a man's wife was just awakened by her husband's sidepiece banging on the front door. She deserves to know what kind of man she married. I'm just sorry I can't be a fly on the wall for the very special episode of the Jerry Springer Show that just started in her driveway. Next one is titled, You Want a Weekend Off? Sure. In fact, have every day off. First off, this isn't my story. It took place a few years before I was even born. Some background info. My family comes from a rural farming community in eastern Canada. My grandfather on my father's side, plus his 6 brothers and sister, lobbied our MLA back in 1982 to bring our community a volunteer fire department. With the department came the ability to access a government grant during the summer to hire local students as the department's groundskeeper. My great-uncle, Grunkle, and chief firefighter, would personally interview any students that applied, and oversee them once hired. It was a basic 9-to-5 job, Monday through Friday with weekends off, and mostly included painting the building, trimming the nearby trees, maintaining the kick, fire training, house, waxing the engines, etc. Grunkle hired a sophomore kid in 1995 who he recalled as Rick, obviously not his real name. Rick seemed like an upstanding young kid, and had what my Grunkle described as a dependable feeling to him. So after a promising interview, Grunkle offered him the job. Rick had one small problem though. He was attending hockey camp for the first week he would be working the grant, and asked Grunkle if he could still go to the camp. Grunkle thought it over, and figured he could make up the time if he worked on Saturdays when he got back, he would still have Sundays off. Rick said that would work and they shook on it. Rick worked the first 2 weeks, as promised, and without any grievances. The kid was attentive, smart, thorough, and polite. Then one day, he came and asked Grunkle if he could take an upcoming Saturday off. Grunkle said that he couldn't, because then the grant would end before Rick finished his hours owed. This is where things went wonky. Rick would ask consistently for that Saturday off, almost daily, if not more often. When Grunkle didn't budge, Rick's mother called up Grunkle and asked him on Rick's behalf for the Saturday off. When she too was shot down, Rick's father tried to persuade Grunkle over the phone, and when he failed, both of Rick's parents teamed up at once. Needless to say, Grunkle was getting annoyed. It all came to a head after one particular day. Grunkle would regularly help my granddad and dad on the farm with odds and ends, and a special machine had broken down during a crucial time. It took the 3 of them, working about 12 hours non-stop to finally get the damn thing running right. On his walk back to his house, Grunkle was confronted, in person, by Rick's parents. They kept saying things like, Rick is a young kid, and his friends all go swimming on Saturdays. Could you just give him this one day off? Grunkle sternly, but politely, reminded them that Rick had gotten an entire week off for hockey camp, and that he was making back that borrowed time by working Saturdays, but to no avail. They kept pleading, borderline demanding, that Rick got the day off. Fine, Grunkle relented, if he wants the day off, he can have the day off. The two were very happy, and promised Rick would be extra grateful when he came in on Monday the following week. No, that won't be necessary. Tell him he has Monday off too. And Tuesday. And Wednesday. Better yet, just tell him that he's fired. Their faces dropped like a bag of rocks. Pleads of, oh no, you can't do that, and, he doesn't need Saturday, he just needs this job, followed suit, but Grunkle had made up his mind. They wanted to pester him for even more time off than he already got? He could have the rest of the summer for all he cared. As fire chief, his decision was absolute, so there wasn't anything that Rick or his family could do. Doesn't mean they didn't try though. Next one is titled, "Who Needs an Attendance Policy, Anyways?" This is my first time posting here, so I'm hoping this is a good fit. Please forgive me if I go into too much detail. I tend to yammer sometimes. For 7 years I worked for a major internet provider in the United States. Most existing technicians were part of a union and had been for quite some time. They had an impressive array of benefits and an impressive hourly pay as well. To get around this, whenever this ISP rolled out the newer, fiber-based internet, TV, phone, they would create a new technician position for completing the installs and repairs. Since this new position wasn't covered by the union contract yet, it has to be voted on and whatnot, the ISP would get a year or two of running these guys ragged for minimal pay and benefits. I was one of those guys hired on for less than I was making as a department manager working retail in order to work 50 to 60-hour weeks. Once we joined the union, it came with better benefits and pay, but some things got weird. We were an addendum in the contract that covered the old-timers, and as such a lot of our rules weren't really specified. Honestly, it felt at times our position's benefits was used as a bargaining chip by the old guard to get what they wanted. But I guess that isn't really what is important to the story. What is important to the story is, we didn't have an official attendance policy at all. Whenever you would look up the attendance policy in the handbook, it'd tell you to see your manager for details. I finally managed to get a copy of what the manager's handbook said, and it wasn't good. Basically, it recommended using common sense when deciding attendance discipline. Our local managers interpreted this to mean advance to the next step of discipline unless it was literally illegal to do so. This led to some weird situations. One time, after a particularly long install in the southern summer running lines through an attic, I wasn't feeling too well. Definitely signs of dehydration, a headache, dizziness, wasn't thinking clearly. I called up my boss and said I need to pack it in for the day. He hemmed and hawed over it, didn't sound happy, but after reminding him that we're constantly told safety is our responsibility, aka, if something goes wrong it must have been our fault, he allowed me to return to the garage. Once I was at the garage, however, he told me that in order to not count as a complete absence, I'd need to go to the doctor and file for FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. This was one of my first malicious compliances because in order to qualify for FMLA you have to miss at least 3 days. So, because they wanted to put up a stink about it, went to the doctor, gave him the paperwork, and took the next 3 days off. Turns out I was, to absolutely no shock to me, denied FMLA. Fortunately, when they tried to write me up for attendance, I pointed up that not only did I have permission to stop working that day before returning to the garage, but I was following their instructions by filing for FMLA. They tried to say, in that case, we'll only keep the write-up on file for 90 days and then remove it if you don't have any other absences. The union rep didn't buy that one either. The write-up got torn up before we left the office. But the whole experience taught me a weird lesson about how they handled sick days and occurrences. See, we got 5 paid sick days, but they weren't excused sick days. Which meant you could be fired before even using them all since management decided each absence was an instant step of discipline regardless of reason, despite their guidelines saying to use common sense. But, there was a catch. Concurrent absences only counted as one occurrence. Missed 1 day? That was one occurrence. Missed 5 days in a row? Still only one occurrence, even if it was separated by a scheduled day off. It was the one rule that was specified in the manager guidelines. You can bet I sure as hell shared that information with all the other technicians. If you were out a single day due to illness, you might as well take an entire week off with pay because you'll never get to use that time otherwise. The managers hated me for it, but I was a bit bitter over the whole FMLA thing and would share that info every single time it came up. They'd threaten to write me up for insubordination, but I'd just tell them we could discuss it in the presence of my union. After all I was doing was sharing information on the attendance policy. The same policy that they used to screw us every chance they go. Next one is titled, Railroad, Fast Enough Yet? I'm going to mangle this story, but I heard it from the guy on the receiving end of MC. I'm sure they are still telling this story 40-something years later. Somewhere in WV coal country, a young roadmaster demanded faster trains, and said that all engineers had to leave it in Notch 5 the entirety of the trip. So the train gets positioned right on the main line and the engineer throws it straight into Notch 5. Instead of moving forward, the wheels start spinning in place. Then everything goes in slow motion. The roadmaster starts saying, "Come on, obvious that's not what I meant," and the engineer just shrugs and says, "Hey, I promised." The wheels continued to spin until the track was melted enough to misshape them. They needed cranes and welding teams brought in and the main line was down for days. Last one is titled, The Creamer is for the Coffee. Story from a few years back at a small church I used to attend. In the common area at the church they had various drinks available. Mostly coffee and things you could make with hot water like tea or hot chocolate. The teens at the church liked the hot chocolate mix best, but eventually one of them discovered it tasted better if they made it with coffee creamer instead of water. Within a few weeks, most of the kids were drinking it that way. Eventually the person who normally restocked things noticed that the little single-serve packets of creamer were running out a lot faster than usual and started asking questions. Didn't take long for them to figure out why. After some discussion, the church leaders decided to make it clearer that the creamer was only for coffee. The result wasn't quite what they expected. The kids didn't bat an eye and most just switched to drinking coffee with heavy creamer. Thanks for listening.